Hello, welcome to the Holistic Healer Podcast, a podcast dedicated to all things holistic. I am your host, Cheryl Lee. Today's guest is Jonny Juicer. He is a juicing enthusiast. He regained his health through juicing and raw food. He is a health coach and a motivational speaker. Today we sit down to discuss Jonny's journey into juicing and raw foods, going inside to unpack traumas and wounding, self-love, spirituality, and so much more. Enjoy the show. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Holistic Healer Podcast. I'm your host, Cheryl Lee, and today's guest is Jonny Juicer. I'm super excited to have him on. He is a juicing enthusiast. He regained his health through juicing and raw foods. He's a motivational speaker, and I'm so excited to have you on. You also do health coaching as well. So thank you so much for coming on this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
For sure. Okay, so let's just do a little recap on your journey into Jonny Juicer. What got you to this present moment now, please?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I am originally from Chicago. I live in LA right now. And I grew up in, a standard Italian household, a lot of, especially being in Chicago, a lot of meat and dairy. It's like the meat and dairy capital of the world and all that good Italian cooking. And throughout my childhood, very young, I had a lot of gut issues. Going into my freshman year of high school, I had my first colonoscopy where I was told I had IBS. I was lactose intolerant. So going into high school, I was an athlete. And I just recall a lot of times, practice, games, like I had to go to the bathroom all the time. There was days I didn't go to the bathroom, and then there was days I legit couldn't stop going to the bathroom.
Wow.
So I had a hall pass throughout high school. So I kind of monitored what I had. I would take these lactate pills sometimes, but I never really was on that. And loved my pizza and diet was never really something. It was almost like I just figured, okay, well, I'm unlucky. I was kind of born with this,
Yeah.
So as I got out of high school, my problems progressively got worse because started, eating away from home, going to a junior college. I would eat Wendy's and fast food all the time with my buddies. And, getting into my 20s, I started drinking, going out partying, and fell into a job. So I was kind of in this cycle of, I was at FedEx, so 12 years as a driver. So it was like a really fast-paced, demanding job. So I would get whatever was fast and convenient, work for my paycheck, go out and party on the weekends with my buddies. And it just ultimately got worse until there was a breaking point, which was in my later 20s, early 30s. I was in toxic relationships and what I'll get into more later, but it's like when you're in that lower vibration of the way you're living, you're attracting all of that. And
Absolutely.
it just was a toxic cycle I was in. And it wasn't until I was 30 when I finally, I'd always watched health documentaries, but nothing really did it for me. Food Inc. was one of the first ones I remember seeing that was like, okay, cool. Yeah, maybe I should watch what I eat. But I was scrolling through Netflix one time, and I was eating a deep dish pizza at the time. I always used to love eating my pizza while I was watching Netflix, right? And then, but I came across Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And that was the first time I was ever really taken away by a film. I was like, wow, this, it was just so powerful to me because number one, I never knew what a juicer was at 30 years old.
Wow. Yeah.
Knowing all about blending smoothies and my protein smoothies for the gym, but I had never known what a juicer was and the power of juicing. So there was a couple people in the film that were going through some of the same stuff I was. I had started developing migraines, like severe migraines in my mid to late 20s.
Oh, wow.
To the point where I'd be at FedEx and I'd have a truck filled with freight and I would have to call my manager because I would have a migraine and I was so nauseated that they would have another truck come and do what they call a sweep. So they would back the back end of their truck to mine and take the freight so they could take it to the airport, or we would swap trucks.
Wow.
So yeah, it was really bad between all my gut issues and the migraines. It just got to a point where, I came to a breaking point, and I'll never forget watching that film and going the next day to get a juicer, I'm like, I was so pumped and inspired by it that I'm going to do this, And I went the next day, bought the same juicer. It was actually an upgraded version. It was the Breville Elite from Bed
Okay.
Bath and Beyond, and right away wanted to start my 3-day juice cleanse
Yeah.
and get my journey going, just jumping into it. So that's kind of where it started, and I'll get more into it, but that's what brought me from,
The
start of my health journey.
Wow. Okay. So did you go ahead then and do like start like an extended juice fast? Did you kind of dive into the month or the 40-day or what?
No. So what's so funny is I looked online because now at this point, all I had done was seen the documentary. Didn't do no
Right.
research, didn't do anything. Like I was just pumped. I'm like, I'm going to get a juicer. So after I got the juicer, I'm like, all right, how could I start this? So I looked up Joe Cross because he was the man in the film.
Right.
And I put juice fasting. And there was, as soon as you Google it, it might still be there. It was Joe Cross and Dr. Joel Furman's 3-day juice cleanse. So I clicked on it and it was free. And it had all the recipes. And I'm like, this is what I'll do, the 3-day juice cleanse. And not even having any structure besides that, like, what am I going to do after? Or,
Right. Right.
So I went to the store, got all the stuff. My girlfriend at the time was doing it with me. And we got all the juices prepared to start my first day back at work, which was on a Monday. So here I am thinking I'm going to just jump into a juice cleanse on a Monday when I came from a fast food diet, So we make all the juices. The first day I did it. The first day I drank all the juices and I thought it was a little weird. I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. I didn't, I wasn't really that hungry, but I completed the day at work. So that night, or I'm sorry, the next day is when I woke up and I had a pounding headache.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God, do I call into work? And I just kind of like wrote it out. I thought I was going to start feeling, maybe I was like a little dehydrated or something. So started drinking my first juice, went to work, started my route, and my stomach's growling. I'm starving. I'm getting real irritable. I'm like, okay, this isn't, this is
withdrawal symptoms setting in.
Yeah, it's like like an addict,
Yeah.
So here I am. I'm in my truck driving, and it's around 11 a.m. and I'm looking to my right, and in the Midwest, there's a restaurant or a fast food chain called Culver's, and it's like cheeseburgers, and it's kind of like an In-N-Out in California.
Right. Okay.
So, and it's like all your addictions are as you're driving,
Oh my goodness.
and I had a little bit of time. It was around my lunch, and here I have my other juices in my little lunchbox. So I'm like, you know what? Screw this. I'm starving. I'm hungry. So
I'm out of this juice cleanse.
Yeah. So I went to Culver's and I ordered. I even remember I ordered a cheeseburger, a large fry. They had fried cheese curds and
oh my goodness.
And a large Sprite. So I'm sitting there, and I remember calling my girlfriend at the time, like, are you still on the juice cleanse? She's like, yeah. She's like, I kind of feel tired. She's like, how are you feeling? I'm like, I'm eating a burger right now. She's like, so yeah. And then after that, I didn't really do that much research. I was just kind of like, I would make a juice here and there and just kind of dabbling along with it. And it wasn't until that year, and it's like in all my before and after pictures, when I saw myself in Christmas pictures, and I'm just like, man, I don't like the way I look. I look unhealthy. I feel unhealthy. I know I have to make a change. Like I had just come to a point where I'm like, I need to do something. So I said, you know what? Starting the new year, I'm going to start this 3-day juice cleanse. I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to also incorporate a juice every day. I'm going to incorporate a mason jar full of green juice every day, and just incorporate it, not change my diet. And that's what I did. That's how my journey started.
Wow, amazing.
I completed the 3-day, which was difficult, but I was just my mindset was more like, when it's the start of the year, you're like, I'm going to do this. Yeah. So, and at the time, this is like a little over 10 years ago now, I really didn't have nothing that I was really getting, like, because you couldn't go online at the time and just like look at people, which I did tend to find later. So I was kind of doing it blindly, but I was incorporating a juice every day, incorporating a juice. And slowly what happened was, you're like, okay, well, I'm making these juices every day. I'm doing the effort. I'm going to start making more conscious choices. I'm not going to eat fast food, or I'm not going to eat pizza.
Right.
Or I'm going to only drink on a Saturday night, and so little changes started happening. Obviously your palate starts changing.
Yeah.
And then I came across Forks Over Knives, another
Mm.
film.
Yep.
That is when I went vegetarian. That was when was that? It was later in January, and went vegetarian. And I said, I'll go vegetarian. I'll never give up dairy, though. I'm never giving up cheese. I
Yeah.
love pizza. And sure enough, a couple months after that, because I was in that documentary phase,
Yeah.
I watched Earthlings. That
Mm.
was March. What was it? March 19th. Next year will be 10 years. That night, I made the decision. I'm done. Like
Wow.
that night, I cried my eyes out with my with my girlfriend at the time,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Whoa," because you hear about, oh, dairy might not be healthy, but when you actually see what's going
I
on,
know.
it had an extreme effect on me, and I just consciously made the decision. I don't want to be a part of that no more. So that is, and that's actually where, because most people think it was a health decision, it was an ethical decision that
Yeah.
ultimately changed my health.
Yeah.
So because the vegetarian, I started losing a little bit of weight, but my gut issues necessarily weren't getting better. My migraines weren't, because I was also still pounding energy drinks at work, and I was
Right.
still doing a lot of things and still going out drinking. But when I gave up the dairy and when I went full vegan was when things started changing. And what's crazy is I started to naturally eating more raw, because I was doing a lot of juice, smoothies, and then I would have like the cooked meal at night. It was almost like the raw till four I was doing without even
Right.
knowing what raw till four was. And that's when things really started taking off, because I started feeling better and I was hungry for information at that point. So I was started YouTubing, and that's where I came across a man that said, like, green juices and raw foods for health. And I'm like, who is this guy? And it was, sure enough, Dan McDonald
Yeah.
outside his RV. And him and Fully Raw Christina, I would always see their YouTube videos, and I was in that zone. Like, I'm the type of person, when I'm in that groove of, like, whether it's like going to the gym or whatever, it's like I'm in it. Like,
Yeah.
there's just nothing but tunnel vision. And I was
Yeah.
feeling so good and losing weight and just having more energy and mental clarity, that I'm like, I've never felt like this, and I wanted more. I wanted more.
Yeah.
And I just started binge watching these guys, and I got so inspired and just took my 16-ounce juice to a 32-ounce juice to 64 ounces to
Wow.
just taking Dan's advice, and it just started working. And it was like unbelievable. I was entering the summer, and I had lost, like, I mean, overall I had dropped like 60 pounds, and got
Wow.
off all my medication that I was taking for my gut, because I was feeling great and I was having normal bowel movements. And then I started finding
Wow.
people when I was living in Chicago. Okay, raw food restaurants. And I came
Yeah.
across Karen Calabrese, who lived
Mm.
out there. And I was so inspired at the time that I just went to her restaurant and I told her, like, who I was. And I'm like, hey, I would love to learn from you. And I took a video of her when she was speaking at an event, and we connected. And then I started
Wow.
going to her restaurant like a sponge, just learning from her. And I would help her with content, and she would trade raw food and information with me.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah, and we became really close, and she's like a good friend of mine now. And it's funny because Dan's a friend of mine, and
Hmm.
Fully Raw Christina's a good friend of mine. And that's kind of how the journey started, and I never looked back. I mean,
Yeah.
everything started changing in my life. I was so inspired, because I was like, I thought, like, I could never heal this. Like, I thought this is
Yeah.
something I'm born with. I got to medicate myself. I got to watch what I eat. But I mean, I drastically changed my life to the point where it wasn't just my health, but it was the way I thought. It was the stuff I was tuned into, the relationships I had. I mean, everything
Yeah.
changed. I
Yeah.
remember, I recall one time I was at work at FedEx, this before I left, and I was eating a watermelon in summer, and I just naturally took my shirt off and took my shoes and socks off, walked barefoot in a field, and I was just eating on my lunch. And it was before I even knew the effects of
Like
grounding.
grounding. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So
It
it was
just,
just
yeah.
I naturally started feeling more connected by eating foods that were connected to the earth. So it's just a powerful
Wow.
journey.
Yeah, like couple things of that. I mean, I think for a lot of people who have health conditions, they feel like it's a life sentence.
Mhm.
Like they're locked into it forever, and they don't trust in the body to heal itself. So they're looking outside of themselves to find answers and to take the advice of others that might not know, what the best interest is for their body. And so for you, like, first of all, like you experience firsthand, like you use the word, there's addictions going on with which I think so many people are not aware. A lot of people don't associate food with being addictive. And so because you've had firsthand experience with what that withdrawal felt like, I'm sure that's helped kind of guide other people when they're experiencing those things as to stay the course. Like how do you help people move through those addictions? Because addictions, if we look at some hard drug like cocaine or alcohol or heroin or something like that, we think, oh my goodness, what a massive ordeal. You have to go into like a rehab house or get professional help. But we don't take that same approach oftentimes when it comes to the addictions of our food habits.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of navigate that when you're dealing with people and their old choices and trying to bring them into a more awareness as to what they're putting in their body?
Yeah, I mean that what you just said, it's making them aware that this
Yeah.
is an addiction, because a lot of people don't believe it's an addiction until
Mm-hmm.
you tell them, okay, well, we have to start eliminating some of these foods.
Yeah.
And it's like they're strung out on them, and they can't say no. And it's because a lot of these foods obviously are chemically engineered to keep us addicted to,
Yeah.
because that's what keeps them on the shelves, all
Yeah.
these
Right.
foods. So I like to always, because what changed for me was the juicing,
Yeah.
the juice, because it's very easy to tell somebody, oh, you got to eat this way or try to do this or try, but just incorporate a juice every
Mm-hmm.
day. That's been something that has been like I tell everybody that just see how you feel for 21
Yeah.
days. And
Yeah.
naturally, you're going to want to just start crowding out these addictions,
Yeah.
especially
Right.
not a juice cleanse. A juice cleanse to me is like the most powerful thing you can do. I know there's levels of fasting with water
Yeah.
fasting and dry fasting and all this stuff, but to me, juice fasting, anybody can do it. You're getting the
Yeah, for
calories,
sure.
you can make the juices palatable, and if you're doing something from a 7 to 10 to 14 day, you're going to come to a point where you start noticing, if you do have a craving, it's not for potato chips or French
Right.
fries. It's for like an apple,
Yeah.
like
Right.
there's been
Exactly.
so many times I've been on cleanses and I'm like, God, I can't wait to just have a salad. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's like your palate just kind of resets. And it's, because when I saw Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, for example, I saw how they would do the juice cleanse, and it's like, yeah, you're doing a reset. But to me, it's like, no, I would use this as a tool to, right, reset the taste buds and do a reset. But also when you come off of it, change your life. You can change
Yeah.
everything right now. Like structure a diet that works for you, that keeps you away from these foods that are doing harm, that are causing the inflammation, that are making you feel tired.
Yeah.
Start moving more towards the plant-based foods, the more living foods. So
Yeah, for sure.
um, I just believe juicing can be one of the most powerful tools for us, whether fasting or just incorporating, because like I said, like somebody, for example, like myself, if there wasn't a juicer, was I just going to start eating raw food? No way.
Yeah. No,
There's no
exactly.
way you're going to try to convince me to just go eat a salad with a cashew raw
Dressing. Yeah.
dressing, right? So
Yeah.
with sprouts, I'd be like, no way. I had to work towards that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, most people can wrap their head around that, just to start the day. And I love how you said, once you started making these choices, just things kind of open up organically. It's something that, like I always like to say, we can either go upstream and, try to fight against what is, or just like go as you start opening up the door, things just naturally kind of organically come in. And there's this flow that kind of happens where one person will be revealed to you, and then that brings you to this. And it's like all for kind of the greater evolvement of yourself, I feel. So during this process, did a lot of your friends that maybe you were associating with and partying with and these types of things, did they just naturally fall away when you started to go down this road?
It's not that they fell away, because I mean, the friends, I still have them, and they're still great friends.
Yeah,
It's funny because a lot of them started getting inspired because, like I said, I'm the type that just has this tunnel vision, and I
right.
started creating a platform before I had Noah, my dog,
Yeah.
in videos with him, it was more, I was posting a lot of juicing inspiration. I was posting recipes. I was posting like as I was going through my transformation, how I was feeling,
Yeah.
and how much weight I was losing, and pictures. And everybody started seeing the changes in me.
Yeah.
Some people obviously, when I would go to FedEx, I'd have like these big 64-ounce mason jar, and people thought I was crazy.
Right.
They're like,
Yeah,
oh,
sure.
here he comes with this swamp drinker. You're losing too much weight. And I really wasn't at the time, like 6'1". I had gotten down to like 180, 170 when I was weighing like 230. But the natural perception of people in America, because everybody
Yeah,
is
for sure.
overweight and sick, is, oh my God, you look normal, your body's normal, but you're losing too much weight. So it was kind of challenging at times, but I learned that I learned very early on, you can't just go up to people and try to tell them
Yeah,
what you're doing. And, it's like running into a brick wall. It's like people are where they're at and on their own journey. And I
absolutely.
was just so focused on my journey that, you know, my friends, it's not that they fell at the waistline, but it was more that I was just so focused on this. And what it ended up happening was I said, you know what, I'm putting all this work in making juices every day, like packing a lunch, like, bringing my watermelon and doing all this stuff and going to the gym and working out more. Let's see what happens if I stop going out. Cause it was like every day in my 20s, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I would go out. So, I started doing weekends of no drinking and go and
Yeah.
not, and that's when stuff really took off. I
Yeah,
was
I
just like,
bet.
wow. So here, because it's like I would do great all week, and people say, oh, well, just you cheat on the weekends. Well, no, it didn't work that way for me, because it's like when you drink, you make bad decisions, you're up all
Yeah,
night, you eat
exactly.
crap food. The next day you don't want to make a juice. So that's when things really started changing, and I had eliminated alcohol and felt better, started feeling better and better and better. And most of my friends, believe it or not, as far as, of course I didn't go out partying with them, but they all started buying juicers.
Yeah, wow.
A
You were
lot
like
of them,
really inspiring them.
yeah. and
Yeah.
and and it was really cool. Like even up until now, like some of my best friends that they still like, or their wives will message me on Instagram, we're gonna be drinking juices, or I'm gonna give them to their kids. And it is inspiring to me to know that I had that effect. And one of
Yeah,
my
for
best
sure.
friends out there had lost a lot of weight. He had started juicing and eating more plant-based, and started losing a lot of weight and feeling better, and just changed his life too. And it made our relationship closer. So
That's amazing.
um, I guess that the relationships that fell at the waistline weren't the real
Yeah,
authentic ones,
exactly.
and the
Exactly.
people that stayed are the ones that are still in my life, that are, it's the real love.
The real
So,
love. And also, I'm sure like the amount of people that have come into your life since then that
oh,
are just,
absolutely.
in alignment with you and resonate with you have
Yeah.
been, I'm sure, like so many,
Yeah. It's kind of like I tell people with relationships, because people will go from relationship to relationship
Yeah,
without doing like the inner work, or
totally.
changing or growing. And it's like, it's almost like a relationship. It's like, work on yourself, like
Yeah.
love yourself to the point where that this is good for you. Know what's good for you, to the point where you won't settle for anything less than what you're aligned with, and and you will meet these people,
Well,
they will
yeah.
come into your life. And that's what
Yeah.
happened
So,
naturally.
yeah. So, did you like before you kind of really started down this road where you were really kind of getting into it and was some real change happening in your life? Did Where on the scale were you in terms of self-love, self-worth? Like, for example, going back to when you were driving FedEx and you were drinking your energy drinks, that type of thing. Like, how have you cultivated more self-love into your life, or did it just kind of happen organically and you were just able to kind of like integrate that?
Yeah, believe it or not, it just kind of happened organically. It
It
wasn't
did.
like it wasn't like a book I read to learn about
Yeah.
self-love. It's like the better I felt, and knowing that, wow, I could really feel this way, and the more energy I had, you just naturally, I mean, they say you are what you eat, but
Yeah.
like when you're drinking juices all the time and eating so much fruit and vegetables, you're happy.
Yeah.
You're happier, you have more energy, and that's what happened. And every decision I started making, like I said, I stopped going out. I started to, do yoga and start working out and start going into nature, and taking nature walks and walking
Yeah.
barefoot, and wanting to feel and be connected with animals, and I
Yes.
didn't care if I was alone. Like I didn't I was the type of person that always wanted to be around people, always wanted to bring people to my house,
Yeah.
always wanted to go out. And it was to the point where I was enjoying the isolation. I was enjoying
Yeah.
the journey because I saw it was taking me somewhere that was very unknown, but I
Yes.
was loving it, the journey, because it was like I was learning about myself. I was learning more about health. And because I was becoming so passionate about it, I was so eager to learn more and more and more.
Yeah, I think too, like I'm exactly the same page as you. Like the more you bring the juices in, the more you're eating living foods, organic foods, there's this kind of desire to be more with self. Because I think not only do people numb out from their emotions and that type of thing with food, but also through distracting themselves with always being around others, kind of getting into other people's business, whatever it happens to be, as a way to numb out from what's really going on. And that was the next thing I wanted to talk to you about. I had a fella on my show last week. I don't know if you've heard of him. His name's Guy Finley. He's been around for a long, long time. And one of the things he says is the change happens when you start to realize that you can't avoid yourself. So
Mm,
when you realize that you're there and
yeah.
you can't avoid it, and no amount of numbing out, no amount of alcohol or food or anything, is you're always going to have to come back to self. So I wanted to kind of use that as a segue, because I think I've talked about this before, especially sometimes with men, there's an over-identification with the outer body. And sometimes going down this road, we see like a lot of weight loss happening, for sure, for men and women, but I think more for men. How do you navigate or kind of write the idea that we don't want to over identify, so that we can use juicing and raw foods to cleanse the body and become more health aware and health conscious, but yet not put the brakes on as soon as we start to see weight loss happening and feel like we have to start going back to like taking in copious amounts of whey protein powder and high protein foods and these types of things. How do you help men? Really, I see this mostly, this idea of, oh my gosh, I can't lose any weight, but really it just kind of organically happens that way. I know for you, you had weight to lose initially,
Mm.
but some people starting down this road are already kind of on the thinner side and they're going to lose more weight.
I feel it balances out. I feel like even if they're thin, they're going to lose weight, but your body is going to balance out. And what I
Mm-hmm.
found was with me, like I had lost a lot of weight, and especially because I've done so much fasting, and I had lost a lot of weight, but you have all this energy too. And I was starting to use that at the gym and having more energy at the gym. And it's funny, because people will say, oh, you need all this protein and you need all this to build muscle. And really, you don't. You just need to go to the gym and have the energy to do so
Right.
and fuel up right. And that's when I just started like building lean muscle while I was eating this way, eating raw. So I feel like you'll get, of course, you're gonna lose the weight and you're gonna get skinny. But trust me, that's something that's everybody's always said, oh, I can never do this, or I can never start juicing. I don't want to lose weight. I don't want to lose all my muscle. And I mean, there's some people that I don't know, maybe that's their motivation to be like huge or want to
Right.
be big. But my journey was always more about health, and obviously what comes with it is, you know, kind of like the vanity with it, like with as you age,
Yeah.
it's like you're aging gracefully. And to me, that's more important, being able to feel physically fit. Like I take boxing classes almost every day now. And
Yeah.
it's something I've been doing this year, something I recently got into, and I'm like addicted to it. And it's like, and most of my day is liquids, it's
Yeah.
not like
Right.
I'm having these huge meals or these huge protein shakes afterwards, like I have my green juice right now. I have sugarcane juice, coconut water, and I'm fueled, like I'm energized and
You're
jacked,
real. Yeah.
so I don't know. It's just there's this stigma and there's this big misconception about it. And with men, it's you see it online with the carnivore and the vegan, and there's
Yeah.
always this ego arguments about what you need, but
Yeah.
until you do it and experience it, and
I
and
think,
unfortunately I know a lot of men probably won't go that route until they see something like I did with earthlings, or something that's going to really grab their
yeah.
attention, or if something health related happens, which it's unfortunate because like I have a family of that's overweight, and a lot of people think they're, the absence of a diagnosis is health, when
Yeah.
in reality, it's like there's a
Yeah,
lot
I
going
mean, when
on.
something like that happens, then it's desperation,
Exactly.
Sometimes it works out for the good and, but oftentimes it's too little, too late, just from unhealthy practices for years and years and years, those accumulate over time. And I feel like it's kind of like developing a reverence for the vehicle that houses our spirit, rather than identification coming from the ego consciousness that would drive the appearance, if that makes sense. So kind of trying to find balance within that. I mean, we all want to look good, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I just feel like a lot of damage can come, especially as we're aging, from carrying on that over identification with the ego consciousness of wanting to look good, which obviously always there's a deeper, layers that go on with that a lot of people don't want to look at or unpack.
Of course.
So when you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but your spiritual awakening or more of a connection to your spiritual practice, did that also just kind of come about very organically? Like you did mention, you kind of felt like you were more connected with nature and you were putting your feet in the ground and these types of things. But did you ever have a moment on your journey up until now where you felt that kind of more of a calling, like for more of a spiritual purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of all started happening when that year that I started talking about, like
Mm-hmm.
I would say like my last year at FedEx, which that was what I'll be 42 in November. So that was probably, I was 33. So it was like 9 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And wow, already that's crazy.
Yeah.
So, it's crazy because I just, with what, because people always say spiritual awakening and your awakening. And it's like, to me, that's what that was. It
Right.
was
Yeah.
waking up from this facade we're living in, this
Mm-hmm.
matrix we're living in,
Yeah.
and inner knowing, and starting to realize like, whoa, like this isn't life. Like we have to do this, and we have to, go to this job and
Yeah.
and work this cycle that's keeping us distracted from ourselves and what our
Yes.
true nature is and what our passion is. And I didn't even know I had a passion.
Yeah.
I played
Right.
basketball all my life. I went to a junior college. I just wanted to watch basketball, play basketball, and and then get into a job, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
But it awoke me to a whole new world of, like I said, there was a passion inside of me that said, this, I do feel this inner calling to, and passion to want to, like, I want everybody to know that you can heal yourselves. I had saw before I even had my journey, my grandma passed from cancer, aunts and uncles, like, everybody, oh, everybody has cancer now, and cancer's in my family, or heart
Mm-hmm.
disease. And it's like, I know people that had heart disease, cancer, and diabetes type 2 that reversed all of those,
Yeah.
on a whole foods plant-based diet with juicing. So here we're show that these top 3 killers are, once you get them, it's like a
Yeah.
death sentence, and they want you in that revolving door. But really, it's like most of these chronic illnesses can be prevented altogether with proper
Absolutely.
lifestyle and diet. And it's, and I will say this, it's probably been the biggest part of my journey, because, I always wanted to inspire my family. And of course, my sister, my aunts, before my mom had passed from an accident in 2020, she reversed heart disease. She was on 7
Wow.
medications, and she started juicing, making smoothies. She went plant-based, lost weight, got off all of her meds, and they wanted to have open heart surgery at the Mayo Clinic. So
Wow.
that was the biggest part of my journey, was helping people, especially my family. I wanted them to see, because it's like we're in these generational,
Yeah, we're stuck
structures.
in all of that lineage.
Exactly,
you know?
exactly. And it's like, oh, the Italian culture, but it's
Yeah.
like, hey, like, you don't think, especially me, I was the biggest food addict you can imagine, but on the whole other side of this is a whole different life and a whole different
Yeah.
world that we haven't even touched on.
I
And
know.
so it was just my passion to try to show them, especially now as I'm turning 42, look at this life I'm living, like, look at other people
I
42 in
know.
my family, or when they were 42, or or just people that it's like, I want to show them that you can have this light and you can feel amazing and be in the best shape of your life. And it doesn't stop when you're 25 and when you get married and when you have
Yeah.
kids. Like, you can be in the best shape of your life when you're 50, when you're 60,
Absolutely.
I know people, Lou Corona, I'm not sure if you've had him on.
I haven't, but I love Lou Corona.
He's my favorite. Besides Dan, he's my favorite. I've gone to his talks almost every month last year here out in California, and 70 years old doing these planks and Superman push-ups. Like, and to me, it's inspiring to see guys like him and Dan and all these guys that are older than me that are showing and defying the odds of, hey, this is the human potential. Like, we can look like this at 50, at 60, at 70. We don't have to be hunched over and in wheelchairs and on 20 meds and checked out. A lot of people are checked out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it all we kind of talked about it, but just the indoctrination starts so early. And, so many people, they've just completely numbed out their entire life and they just can't see beyond it. It's not in the cards, so to speak, for them because they just can't break away from that. But, oftentimes, thankfully, there's so much amazingness that can be hidden behind what we consider to be the traumas in our life. And sometimes those are the things that will be the catalyst for change, and can completely change people's lives. Did you find that when you started to feel this connection and you kind of organically started to have this more connection to spirituality and, that type of thing, how was it for you in terms of like old woundings, traumas that would come up? Because I know a lot of people, when they release the old habits of eating foods that would numb them out, they can find themselves in the corner crying and, feeling like maybe they're tapping into some anxiety and these types of things. And I believe that it's just because the food is allowing, all of these things to kind of come up and out to process and unpack them. Did you go through any time in your journey where things started to come up for you that you were like, wow, these things I packed away and now they're showing themselves?
Absolutely. When I did my 40-day juice cleanse, I'll never forget being in a hot yoga class and leaving the hot yoga class, and I broke down. And, because it's like you're peeling, it's like, I've heard it before too. It's like we're an onion and we're peeling back these layers. And then all of a sudden it's like stuff comes up, of course. And there was stuff with my biological father, that, he wasn't the best father and wasn't around, that had come up at the time. And I'm a very forgiving person, like, of course, stuff came up and I've worked through it a lot easier than most people have. I mean, because I've even done retreats most recently last September. And a lot of it's about, letting go of the past and working through trauma and childhood trauma. And because I think it's such an important part, holding on to stuff, affects us more, probably more than food itself,
Absolutely.
And I've seen it in my life. I've seen it with people close to me that have gotten cancer, that are eating super healthy, but they're holding on to this anger and this pain and this resentment. And I mean, even for myself, like I was saying, I had in 2020 losing my mom, we were very close, and I'm here in California and I get a call that she got in an accident, and, somebody had shot heroin and was going 100 miles an hour and jumped the median on the highway and hit my family head on. And, my mom had passed. And, I held on for a little bit. I held on to anger.
Sure.
And the biggest part of the grieving and getting past it was forgiveness, for actually forgiving this kid and looking from a different perspective of, what was he going through? And I know it's very hard for people that'll hear this to, like, how can you forgive somebody like that? But it's more for you, because you holding on to that, because most of my family still holding on to that. And you see how it's affecting their lives 3 years later.
Totally.
So, it's, it's very powerful. And I think with the lifestyle that I'm in, it definitely helps you navigate these emotions more and grieve through things and let things go easier.
Yeah, for sure. I had that experience too in a hot yoga class. Because they say we hold a lot of emotions and trauma in our hips.
That's what I heard afterwards.
Yeah.
Why? What is it with this yoga class? And
I know.
Same thing.
Yeah. So I went in and I was, doing a pose that was my hips were open. And I just, all of a sudden, it was a packed class. And I just started bawling like uncontrollably, almost to the point of like hyperventilating.
Wow.
And all of this stuff just started coming up. And I just ended up having to take the class on my back, basically. But it was just kind of a moment of, wow, like there was a lot of stuff down there that needed to come out. Sometimes, we don't know, probably like you didn't walk into that yoga class knowing that that was going to happen.
Right.
And yet it brings awareness to like, okay, there's things down there. And also, like you said, too, a lot of people don't think about the ancestral trauma that we carry from our family, down the lines and how we hold on to that in our individual bodies,
Right.
So yeah, so I just wanted to ask you about that. Do you use any type of like, do you have a spiritual practice now in terms of meditation or?
I do meditate. I pray. Like after losing my mom, I went to a Christian church and had an interesting experience there and kind of came to Christ in a way of not necessarily the religion, but more the relationship aspect of it.
Yeah.
And it was very fulfilling to me. But it's funny because it's been like this. From the very beginning, it's just been this very interesting journey I've walked of like shedding this where I always tell people I feel like I died a life, in
Yeah.
Chicago and was
Yeah.
reborn. And
Yes.
then here I came and I'm going through this journey. And then I had this traumatic experience with my mom and I kind of shed another layer on myself. And then here I'm reborn again. And
Mm.
I feel like I'm kind of like coming into like, and maybe it's with the age as well, but I feel like I'm entering the best times of my life, not necessarily with the outer world, but just with my inner world
Yeah.
of understanding, and just knowing, all that I've been through and all that and just everything. It's just an interesting journey just to sit and kind of think about, and it's actually just brings me to gratitude because it's like,
Yeah.
if I would have gone through some of the stuff that I've gone through before this journey started, I would have probably been hitting the alcohol. I probably would
Yeah.
have been smoking weed or, doing something to numb myself or go right back down that downward spiral. So it's been, I don't want to say spiritual evolution, but it is constantly, you are constantly
Well, you
evolving.
are. I mean, we are. I believe that, we are here to evolve and to grow.
Of
And,
course.
I think that there is like when you go down, whether it's this other, not everyone goes down the path of like raw food or veganism or these types of
Right.
things. But I think that as long as you have awareness and the insight and the desire to want to grow and evolve, then there will be a rebirth. There'll be like, we talk about the ego death and these types of things
Right.
happening when we're on our journey. And so through that, there is a rebirthing, and that sometimes can happen, every decade, maybe every couple of decades. But, we are different. If you look back at yourself when you were 20, you're a completely different person now,
Yeah.
absolutely different. So I really think that, there is that rebirthing that happens.
It's funny too, because you were just saying that, not everybody's on the raw foods but it's, I don't know about you, but doesn't it, and this isn't to knock anybody's diet or
Mhm.
what,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
it's amazing to see people in that are extremely spiritual that aren't, because I feel like the fasting and the raw foods like helps kind of almost like, you get away from the distractions. It kind of gets rid of all the stuff to help you
Yeah.
tap in more, like when you're like, for example, when I was on a 40-day fast or when I'm on juice cleanses or fasting, that is when I feel like I'm the most connected, or I can, meditate and pray and
Yes.
really feel tapped in, you
Yes.
know, as opposed to always eating. And I couldn't do that.
Well, yeah. And I think too, I'm sure you know who Gabriel Cousins is.
Of course.
Yeah. So I had him on my show a couple months ago, and we were talking about this idea, his book, Spiritual Nutrition, and the idea of being able to clear, like says, the nadis in the body, to clear those out to a point where you are able to connect to that part of yourself and to develop that awareness. But if you are, for example, like he talks about, if you're eating animals, for example, and you're taking on that energy and you're trying to meditate, or you're trying to become, evolve in your spiritual practice, it's not as, he says, of course it can be done. And there's people who do it, but at the level, that's the question mark. Because I mean, Dan said it too. The spirit likes no food. The spirit likes nothing at all. It's our bodies and oftentimes our ego mind that wants to be always constantly eating. Of course, we need to eat just for sustenance and to stay alive. But really, at the end of the day, we don't really need that much food. And the less food, that's why people fast, right? They're more cognitively aware. They have more energy. They're more open. So how do you feel? Do you have any opinions about using plant medicine for uncovering some of these past traumas, woundings? Have you ever experienced it?
I've done psychedelic mushrooms. I've never done no ayahuasca or anything like that.
Yeah.
I have had a pretty trippy experience. It was actually when I moved out to California, and I had never messed with psychedelics before, but I did have intention going into it because when I first moved here, it's like you're uprooting your life.
Yeah.
Leaving a 12-year job, leaving a relationship, leaving, your family to come here to grow and have more peace. Because, like when you live in your hometown, it's like, as you're trying to grow, and it's not nobody's fault, but everybody has their perception of you. And when you're always around them, it's like, this is you, this is little Johnny. And, it's like when you move out, it's when you have that peace and when you have that space and time to really continue to grow and
Absolutely.
like a tree, like taking it and putting it in a field that it could thrive.
Yeah.
So my intention into it was, and I did a pretty high dose, was if this was the right decision, if I was on the right path, and had a very profound experience on it. Now, I wouldn't say it's for everybody because it wasn't, it was very up and down, but I've been to Tulum many times. I have a lot of people out here that I'm friends with that do different types of ceremonies, and for them, it seems to work. But there are also people that I know that abuse it. There's people that I know that do a different ceremony every month to escape. There's a guy I know in San Diego who's always doing ayahuasca. And he even told me he's struggling right now being halfway in the physical, halfway in the spiritual. So, it's like, sure, maybe it can be used for a tool for some people who can't really get to certain parts. I've seen a guy I know online say that he did a beautiful ceremony somewhere and that it was able to help him bring up stuff that he couldn't get past and get through. So, sure, if for some people it might work. Like I said, I never really tapped into the ayahuasca stuff. I had my own little mushroom thing that helped me get through some of the, some of the things that I was trying to work through. And then after that, I felt like I didn't need it anymore. I'm like, I feel like I got the message that I needed. I got the, and that's it.
Yeah, for sure. I know, like Rashad Evans. He, I don't know if he's like the UFC guy. He completely became basically a raw foodist, like on Arnold Ehret's The Mucusless Diet Healing System is what he uses and practices now.
Wow, no way.
And that was through a mushroom ceremony because he had a really he did like a massive hero's dose of mushrooms. And when he came out of that ceremony, he came out saying that the spirit told him that, if he wanted to be life and to promote life, he needs to eat life. And if he eats death, he will become death. And so that was like a very strong message he received. And he's now been into juicing and raw foods now for a very long time. And he talks about, of course, coming from being a UFC fighter, I mean, you can only imagine like the ego and everything that's involved in that. And so he had to kind of drop all of that, drop a ton of weight. But at the end, he promotes, like I move better in my body. I feel better in my body. And I dropped a lot of weight, but I feel great. So it's pretty cool, to see some people have these downloads that come through to make changes. I've never done ayahuasca either. And I'm not really sure if I want to because the hygienist in me sees the vomiting and the defecation and I'm like, I don't know if that's really good,
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, but I know it does help a lot of people. So how are you? I mean, I know that you do a lot of, I mean, even with you coming on today, I'm so grateful and so thankful that you took the time out to be with me today. But how are you on service, like when it comes to like serving others, like as kind of your purpose, moving through life and unpacking and unraveling what's happened to you and this beautiful experience that you continue to evolve and grow from? How do you kind of help others and serve others to help them on their path?
Yeah. I mean, there's many different ways. Like I was saying, like, I do like retreats and this stuff
Mhm.
online, but I say the easiest way to say it is just being,
Just
just
being, yeah,
being what I do, like living it, like being a light and actually living this lifestyle. There's so much more I know I could be doing, but and when I lost my mom, I kind of lost myself for a little bit because it
sure,
was even
of
though you're on
course.
this spiritual journey and knowing
Mm,
this and everything, it's like you're still having this physical experience, and
of
it rocked
course.
my world for a while. And it was a journey back to myself. And, it's just another aspect of my journey that I feel like I can also, it's not just about the health stuff, but it's, like when I say like being a light and being an example, it's like now I have another layer that I can help people work through trauma,
Yes,
as
yes,
far as like
absolutely.
somebody losing somebody traumatic. Everybody's going to experience it. It's not a matter of if, it's when.
But
So
yeah, absolutely.
it's, to me, it's like I like that I can be some a light for somebody when it comes to diet, when it comes to, because there's so many people that have come up to me and will say like, what are you doing, or what's your diet? I mean, I was just in San Diego and was having a conversation with somebody because they were trying to lose weight and trying to get into juicing, and it's like it just inspires me to know that I can have that effect, being grateful I have a platform where people can follow. And that's always my message on Instagram, like in social media, is I do the content. There's a lot of content I do for free that's just
Yeah,
focused on, I might throw my dog in there, but I'm using him as a tool to plant seeds. Like I've had
right.
so many people tell me like, hey, I started watching your videos for your dog, but I bought a juicer. I'm
Yes.
plant-based now. I'm eating more raw. And it's like, that's ultimately the message, and
Yeah.
also obviously bringing in the love and the laughs, because it's something I think our world needs right about.
We need that. Yeah, we really do need that for sure. So your retreats, like what if someone comes on a retreat with you, what are some things that you're doing on those retreats with people?
Yeah, so I've been doing retreats. Actually, one of my first ones I did with Karen in Costa Rica back in, I believe it was 2018. And, it was always bringing in the raw foods and talking. I actually had a Reese at that one, a
Oh,
Reese
really? Oh, cool.
Latham. Just actually, it was crazy. We didn't even know. He just walked in. and
Wow.
and
So
he actually did a
fun.
couple demos there, and I got to know him really well. He's a legend.
Yeah.
I always love giving homage to all those people, because
Yeah.
without them I wouldn't even be here.
I
It's
know.
like a lot
So
of these
true.
people on social media are doing all this stuff, but it's like I feel like we always have to give back to these people, because these are the people that paved the way and that continue to
Yeah.
do so at an old age that you wouldn't even think they're that old.
I know.
um,
Crazy.
yeah, so at that retreat and the ones I used to do, it was more the raw food, the juicing, teaching about this, sharing the journey, incorporating some yoga and movement, and like men's, women's circles. But over the last couple of years, the biggest part of, I feel, these retreats is also we've integrated breath work,
Mm.
as well as letting go of the past, and workshops on that and how to heal trauma, and being able to create from an open space, a
Yeah.
space of possibilities, because we can't do that if we're still holding on to stuff.
Totally. I mean, I feel like it's great to start, using the foods and become passionate just like you did. I think all of us kind of started like that, but to really make it sustainable, I believe, like at some point you've got to go inside and you've got to start. We all are carrying around stuff and it's uncomfortable, and most people don't like, we're pain avoiders by nature, I think. But it's like on the other side of that, it just makes this journey and this lifestyle just so much more incredible, because a lot of us don't even know we're carrying around all that stuff until we actually let it go. And it feels like 1,000-pound brick's been lifted off of our chest.
Yeah. And I feel like if you're on the journey, it's going to come up.
Yeah, it's going to come up.
And if you avoid it, you aren't going to grow in that direction. You're going to keep
Yes,
repeating patterns and keep going back. So you have to face it at some point.
exactly. I like what Dr. Morse says. He says some people, some souls are here and they're just immature souls and they're just not, they're here to play and party and that's it. And that's, I think, too, another, just allowing people their journey as well, that everyone is on their own unique path and, amazing if they can come into this and start evolving and growing. But it's just for others, it's not. And it's just, having the allowance for those people as well. No judgment, just,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's funny because I was having a conversation with a friend about that. It's like, who do you blame? Do you blame the people for not, is it ignorance for not actually looking because we're in the information age now? Or is it really just deep indoctrination and ingrained from, generation and generation to the way this world is? Like, you got to go get indoctrinated in the school systems.
Yeah.
And this is the food we're going to eat. And these are the commercials and the shows. And it's like, it's a program. It's literally like you're born and they stick a hard drive in your head.
Yeah, it's by design.
It's by design.
It's
exactly.
by design.
So, and it is up to us, I feel like. I mean, if I didn't have the health issues I did and care about the way I looked and felt, who knows if I would have,
yeah, who knows? But I feel too, also, like for guys like you, it's amazing because you are basically giving an invitation, an allowance for other men to be able to step into this. Because speaking of indoctrination, men especially, most are raised, they're armored up by the time they're 10 years old. You don't cry, you don't show emotions, you don't talk about your feelings, you just go to work and, and this is something that's played and it becomes part of the hard drive. And trying to remove that, I think there's always this acceptance piece where we all want to be accepted. We want to be accepted by our family, by our friends, by just, the population in general.
Absolutely.
And men, I feel like it's for women as well, for sure. But I do feel that there's more of a movement now for men to be able to kind of go into those places, to open them up as well. And ultimately that's going to create, a better union between the feminine and the masculine and all of these things where real growth can happen. Because if we're walking around with a closed heart and we're armored up, it makes it very hard and it creates really dysfunctional relationships and, which then breeds our children. And it just is a cycle, right? So I love that you're able to come on and talk about this and talk about your feelings and the wounding and the trauma, and that it's okay. Like in fact, it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary to enter into that portal of growth.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Especially the world we're living in now, because if we thought we were indoctrinated back then,
oh my gosh,
it's only getting worse with the stuff and the agendas and all the crap that's going on. So it's very important that men like this are having kids that are conscious and raising them consciously to disassociate the stuff that's being shoved down their throats. Because I mean, I see it even in my family and it's like,
I know it's so hard. And I think too, for it's another layer as well, because for people who got the procedure, when that happened, there was that was also by design as a closing off for more awareness and more ability to see truth and all of these things. So now's the time to, to really, go and take one of your retreats, go and get a breathwork seminar, do something to really start. Because I feel like as long as you have the desire, then you'll be supported in that and things will happen to support you. Like you just said, it's like just one thing, people open up. It's just, that's how things are, once you start your path. So just two more questions for you. One is breath work. So you said that you're using some breath work in your retreats. Do you do breath work yourself as part of your kind of practice?
Never used to.
Never used to. Yeah.
But now I do, even if it's for 5 minutes, even if it's something that I think is very powerful. It's something that I also learned Lou Corona, it's a big part of his practice. And the breathwork instructor that we bring at the retreat is somebody local that also, she's incredible too, on a very basic level.
Yeah.
And it's just, not just breathing through things, but I mean, what I've noticed is digestion,
Yeah.
and just in the sense of bringing oxygen in the body, we're not
Yeah.
consciously breathing anymore. Nobody, we don't stop and think like, wow, how grateful we are for this breath. And
I
that
know. The breath
it's,
that's breathing us all,
yeah, it's
right?
like our first form of food,
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Everything comes around to breath, and we just take it for granted, we go through and we don't think about it, but connecting to breath, it just all of these things, when you've got your breath work and you're getting your feet in the ground and you've got awareness to what's going on and you've opened your heart, and it's like your whole life just absolutely transforms,
it
and
does.
things just keep opening and opening and opening. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's
And
exciting.
exactly. And this is, like I said, March will be 10 years of my journey, and it's
Wow.
never ending. Like I said, I just started doing the breath work,
Yeah.
So it's like all these different things keep happening and you keep learning and keep growing. And it's beautiful. It really is. It's a beautiful journey. Because when I
Yeah.
first got into it, it's like, you got to start juicing. It's the raw foods, but
Yeah.
it's everything. It's
It's
healing your
everything.
heart. It's walking barefoot. It's moving. It's rebounding. It's you
Yeah.
putting it all together.
And that's for my podcast, being a holistic, I've said this many times before, where I feel like we can often get pigeonholed into the diet. It's okay, it's the diet,
Absolutely.
it's the raw food, but there is like a massive bike wheel with many spokes on it, like Dan likes to say, that, what, you need to get good sleep. You have to get out in the sun. You got to get your feet in the
Absolutely.
ground. You got to deal with your emotional crap. You got to
Mhm.
you got to move the body, and all of these things are equally important to have a holistic approach to your body and your life and how you're going to continue to show up in the world. If some of these things are left behind, I feel like they're going to manifest themselves in other ways in the body.
I agree. That's a great
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
So I have one last question for you. I ask all of my guests the same question at the end of the podcast. So here goes. The question is, what is your authentic life print? What is your unique expression in the world as Jonny Morelli?
I mean, when I really think about it, and when I look at, for example, like the work I do, it comes back to love. It
Mm,
really is. I
yeah.
know it's a very broad answer and very generic maybe to some, but it is love. It's love through food. It's love through connection. It's love through relationships with animals. With our
Yeah.
food, and it's just love because there's so much anger and hate and fear in the world,
Yeah.
that now more than ever, like that's what my message is love through
Wow.
everything I do, through every action. Like that's ultimately what I feel like. And like, again, I say it's probably generic to many, but it's what heals the world. Love heals the
Yeah.
world. That's the
So
most
true.
powerful force in the world. So,
Yeah.
and that was something that
Beautiful.
I learned in my mushroom experience,
Oh, you did? Wow.
that love is the most powerful force, that fear is an illusion keeping us from stepping into our truth and our power. That was the message that kept coming. Love is
Wow.
all that matters. Love is all that matters. And it's something
Beautiful.
it's always with me. So,
Wow. That's beautiful. Amazing. Yeah. Another amazing download through the spirit of the mushroom,
yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's
great.
crazy.
Well, how can people find you? What are some of the, are you hosting any retreats coming up in the future?
Trying to announce one, hopefully that's going to be in October or November here in Southern California, most likely
Okay.
San Diego. But to just be on the lookout, you can find me at Jonny_Juicer on Instagram. My website is JonnysJuicer.com. I do have a YouTube. I don't really do as much there. Yeah. So, and Facebook, Jonny_Juicer as well. So that's
Okay.
kind of where you find me.
That's cool. And I'll link all of your everything in the show notes, as well as how to find you. So thank you so much for coming on today. I loved our conversation. Again, I'm like super, super grateful for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Likewise. This was
Okay.
awesome.
Thanks, Jonny.